Om Badram Karnevi Shrunuyam Deva Badram Pashe Makshabhir Yajatra Sthirai Rangai Stushtavansa Tanubi Veshema Deva Hitam Yadayu Swastina Indro Vruddashrava Swastina Pusha Vishwaveda Swastina Starksho Arishtanemi Swastino Brihaspatirdadatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Friends, today we are starting a new scripture, the actual scripture. Up till now, we have been moving around the scriptures. You remember our journey started 22nd July 2020. Patanjali Yoga Sutras, Narad Bhakti Sutras, several books by Shankaracharya, Vivekananda, Vedanta Sar, Chatusutri. Now we are taking Upanishad for the first time. And it is well known that the one scripture for the whole world is the Vedas. And Vedas has two parts, the ritualistic part and the knowledge part. Now, this ritualistic part gives us the highest heaven, but not freedom. And so, perfection of life is not there. Fulfillment of life is not there. For that, we must shift our attention to the knowledge portion. Now, we say knowledge, but remember, knowledge is not information. Knowledge is not intellectual conviction. So, first of all, today, let me define what I mean by knowledge. Now, I see you. I know that I see you. If I close my eyes, I do not see you. But I know that I do not see you. Now you see me. You know that you see me. Now I'm using the word see again and again. You hear from me. I hear from you. I know that I hear from you. You know that you hear from me. So what is this knowledge? I think, I feel, no. What is my basic consciousness about myself and about the world? If you analyze that, you will find my consciousness about myself, present consciousness, is that I am a living being, what is technically called a jiva. I am a living being. I am a subject living in the midst of this world full of objects. That is my basic consciousness. And it changes. It is false on many accounts. Because what am I? Am I this body, which is changing every moment? To the extent that doctors tell us that after 12 years, not a single old cell remains in the body. So which I am? Am I the mind? Mind waxes and wanes. This I should be something constant. Now my I consciousness, even this undergoes change. A small kid's I consciousness and an old man's I consciousness is completely different. So what really am I? So from this count we see that my knowledge at present about myself, my consciousness about myself at present is false or wrong. Because it is changing every moment. Then there is another way to look at it. This I consciousness is shifting. Am I the body or my body? Am I the mind? So sometimes I am the body, sometimes I am the indriyas, sometimes I am the mind, sometimes I am this I. So continuously changing, shifting, continuously changing one side. Whether I am a body, indriyas, vitality, mind, I consciousness, changing continuously. And shifting, I am one of them. I am not always them. Sometimes I am the body, sometimes I say my body. Sometimes I am the mind, sometimes I am the indriya. So how can this be any reality there? Now there is another way of looking at it. See the consciousness of the rishis, the perfected sages from whom we are getting these Upanishads. What is their consciousness? They do not see I as separately real. They do not see the world full of objects to be separately real. They are aware, they are always conscious of one reality in them, outside them. They are always aware of one reality inside and outside. No difference between, no gap between the subject and the object. No subject, no object. Subject, object-less reality. That is their consciousness. And why it is real? It is never changing. It is never changing, it is constant. It has two forms, I will tell you. If they are in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, if they are in the, what they call contentless meditation, then there is no I, no you, nothing, one reality. And when they do look at the world, what they see? The same reality is here, the same reality is there, the same reality or consciousness is expressing through my seeing, through my hearing, through my touching. So one reality appearing as many. That is their consciousness, permanent consciousness. And so that is real. Another way of looking at it is, see their life. Their life has a sense of fulfillment. Their life is perfect. My life is imperfect. My life, I am incomplete. I am fraction. I am half. That is my life. And I have several wants which never end. They have no wants. They are ready to help people. There is no selfishness, no wants, no desires, and always bliss. Bliss is their very nature. And so that is their real consciousness. My consciousness of today about myself and the world, about the world. World is ever changing, continuously changing and changing and changing. How it can be real? And in dream there is another world. In deep sleep there is no world. So how can the world be real? So this is called knowledge. My knowledge at present is false, wrong. But that is called knowledge. The basic consciousness which underlies my thinking, feeling, everything. I think I, a limited being, thinks of some objects about myself. Making myself an object, I think, which can never be made an object. Anyway, so this, my knowledge is wrong and false. We have seen by several counts. Rishi's knowledge is right. And if I can get that knowledge, if my knowledge is changed into, transformed into what the Rishi's knowledge is, that is called the knowledge portion of the Vedas. Knowledge portion of the Vedas does not give some information. It tells me you are real, Your reality is absolute. Your reality is one without a second. And to get that, I have to struggle. And that struggle is helped by these treatises, the scriptures, the real only scriptures of the world. All the other scriptures are true so long as they follow these scriptures. These scriptures stand by themselves. And so, we call it by two different names. One is Vedanta. The other is what you heard just now. We are going to start the study of Muṇḍaka Upanishad today. Muṇḍaka Upanishad today. So, Upanishad is the common word, and there are several specification names given: Katha Upanishad, canon Upanishad, Muṇḍaka Upanishad, Prashna Upanishad, etc. So, what is Upanishad and what is Muṇḍaka Upanishad? That let us think in the beginning. The subject matter thought according to the name. First, I introduced to you what is knowledge, what is right knowledge, what is wrong knowledge. Now, this word Upanishad stands for knowledge, not for any book. It does not stand for any book. It stands for knowledge. And we understood just now what is that knowledge for which it stands. It not only stands for the Rishi's knowledge, but it stands for transforming my knowledge into Rishi's knowledge. That is the knowledge it stands for. My actual consciousness will undergo a sea change. My actual consciousness will be transformed totally. And side by side, my personality will be transfigured. I will not remain the same person. I will not remain an ignorant, wrong knowledge person. I will not remain a person with imperfections. I will remain a perfect person with perfection, with fulfillment, with bliss permanent. So, this Upanishad word stands for that. What are the three parts in this word? Upa, Ni, and Sat. And this Sat is not Satchidananda Sat. This Sat stands as a verb to know. This Sat word stands for knowledge, and this Sat word has three meanings. What are the three meanings? It destroys something. It gets something for me, and it loosens something by which they lose their force. Now, when Upa and Ni are joined to it, this knowledge, which is with the Rishis, which if I get, my wrong knowledge will go, destroyed forever. It will not come back, it will be destroyed forever. And I will get my own real nature. I will get my universal cosmic real nature. That is what I will get. I will get my perfection. I will get my fulfillment. And I am bound today. Today I am bound by my desires, which are due to the wrong knowledge. What is wrong knowledge? I am a person, subject, living in the midst of words, which is full of objects. And so there is a subject-object relation, subject-object desire, subject desiring for object, and that is my bondage. These desires drag me here, there, life after life, they drag me. So this bondage of desires will get loosened. That means it will lose its force. They will never bind me up again. These things happen not by a book, but by the knowledge thereof. And then Upa means you have to go near. Now, if there is a guru, a master, we can physically go near it. How to go near the knowledge? That means We have to study this with love and devotion. Love is the main force transforming the personality. Love is the main force which will change our consciousness. Love for the reality. Love for our own real nature. We are being pulled by our real nature. And that pull, if we put ourselves in that flow, and when we reach our real nature, our life will be transformed. So, upa means to assimilate, to absorb. Swami Vivekananda has a beautiful expression for it. He says that the Christians have a prayer. My God, nearer to thee. He said the Vedanta will change one word. My God, nearer to me. So this is called upa. The knowledge will come near to me. The knowledge will be absorbed. The real consciousness will arise in me if we study it with love and devotion. And then, what is this word ni? Ni has two meanings, nishchaya and nishtha. A firm resolve to follow this knowledge wherever it takes. A firm conviction in the reality of the knowledge of the rishis. A firm resolve to follow this wherever it takes. And this resolve has to be, that is nishchay. And this resolve has to be permanent, steadfast. That is nishtha. Nishtha word is sometimes used for something external. If a man for 10 years or throughout his life gets up at 5 o'clock, meditates on God, that is called nishtha. But that is the outside form of nishtha. The main nishtha follows from this, that if I take this, I do not require anything else. If I take up this, I do not require anything else. That is, makes me steadfast in that. So, this knowledge of the rishis, if I approach with love and devotion, with nishya and nishtha, it will destroy my wrong knowledge forever. It will get for me perfection, and I will lose all my bondages to it. Now, where are these Upanishads found? Why the other name is Vedanta? We read just now, Bhagavan Madhara and Vyasa's. People call it Brahma Sutras or Vedanta Sutra. That is, all Vedantas, all Upanishads summarized or systematically put together. But each Upanishad is called Vedanta. Ved, Anta, Vedanta. Anta does not mean physically end. Anta means the climactic knowledge of Veda. Veda means knowledge. But Veda does not mean all knowledge. All supersensuous knowledge. All supersensuous knowledge is Veda. Knowledge of devatas, knowledge of subtler elements, knowledge of laws of how karma binds us. Now, what is the climax of this knowledge? That there is one reality only. That there is one existence, consciousness, bliss only. Transcendent, immanent reality. Transcendent, beyond all, immanent, all-pervading reality. And this knowledge is called Vedanta. So, I told in the beginning, the knowledge portion of the Vedas, that is called Vedanta. And so, now the other question which arises in the mind, why it is called Muṇḍaka Upanishad? Now, Knowledge is one, but it is given in so many ways because the receiver's mind is different. The giver's mind is different. So the giver giving this, communicating this knowledge to the receiver has various ways. And to remember that, we do not get any Rishi's name here. That was not the style of those great sages. They did not want to come as a person. They want to become only the transmitters of real knowledge to us. As great Swami Vivekananda says, I am a voice without a form. So those rishis were like that. So we have to remember it, that there are different aspects of it. And we know that the great Vedas are divided into 4 books by the great sage Vyasa. He divided 3 Vedas, and then the 4th one was born, Atharva Veda, from which this Upanishad is there. This great Atharva Veda is 3 Upanishads: Muṇḍaka, Prashna, and Mandukya. I will talk about that also later. So, what is this Muṇḍaka Upanishad? As the name signifies, and as the text will further tell us, it is primarily meant for those who have done Muṇḍaka. That means, what is the shaving of the head? Not as a style, not as a fancy. Shaving of the head means taking up sannyas. Shaving of the head means renunciation. Shaving of the head means giving up the present pattern of life and entering a form of life which is totally dedicated to the realization of God. That is the very fact signified by the name. Muṇḍaka Upanishad means it is an Upanishad for those who have done Muṇḍaka, who have renounced their home. Then we will ask, why should we hear? Well, I take for granted that all of you have mentally renounced the world. The sannyasis physically renounce the world. The householders or the laymen, as they are called, this word householder is peculiar. They are holding the house. No. The Indian word is grahasthashrami. They have taken hold of a house as a fort, and from there they are fighting. They are renouncing everything mentally. I take for granted that all of you are ready or have already renounced everything mentally, and then we shall walk together. So that is the very significance of the word Muṇḍaka Upanishad. Now let me tell you something external but very, very important. You know, traditionally, Muṇḍaka Upanishad, there are certain Upanishads which can be studied in the very beginning, and Muṇḍaka is one of them. Cutless people study, I would say from one point of view, Muṇḍaka stands supreme as the Upanishad for the beginners. There is another Upanishad called the Prashna Upanishad, also belonging to the Atharva Veda. Now, people these days, they have lost the tradition. All the so-called traditionalists have lost the tradition. Tradition, if we start from hoary antiquity, or as we chant Shankaracharya Madhyasthan, see what Shankaracharya has to say. Now let me tell you why. There is a Upanishad, sometimes I miss the name, either Muktika Upanishad or Kaivalya Upanishad. It enlists some Upanishads for us. It says, there is a shloka, by Om, you should get your knowledge. If you are not that many books you read to get more knowledge, because knowledge is one. So, by Om, you should get your knowledge, if you are not getting that, you should study the Mundaka Upanishad. Same, Atharva Veda. Mandukyam ekam evalam mumukshunam vimuktaye. It is one Upanishad is sufficient to give mukti. But if you do not get mukti by that, then that Upanishad tells us study 10 Upanishads. 10 Upanishads is asked us to study. Actually, we, the real traditional Vedantis, always study 11 Upanishads. Anyway, now this 10 Upanishad enlisting is by a shloka. And when you make a poetry, you have to make several adjustments. It has a meter called Anushtup meter. And to fit in that Anushtup meter, the list tells us, Isha Kena Katha Prashna Munda Mandukya Taitiri Isha Kena Katha Prashna Munda Mandukya Taitiri Aitarayam Cha Chandogyam Brihadaranyakam Tatha. So in the list, Prashna comes before Mundaka. And it has created a havoc in the so-called traditionalists. Without taking a name, a famous ashrama in Rishikesh, which is known for its traditional learning, has published a book in which Prashna is taken first. And they teach also that first. But if we refer to the great Shankaracharya, at the end of this Muṇḍaka Upanishad, he tells that we shall tell this later in Prashna Upanishad. We shall tell this later in Prashna Upanishad. And in the beginning of Prashna Upanishad, it tells clearly, it is a sequel to Muṇḍaka Upanishad. I am telling this, the outside part, but equally important part. Now let me tell about my own life. When I joined the Ramakrishna mission in Nagpur in 1959, a series was going on and the teacher had already taught Katha Isha Kena Mundaka by real tradition. And he was to take up Prashna Upanishad. I joined at this point. So the supreme authorities of that ashram discussed and thought, if he studies Prashna Upanishad, before studying Muṇḍaka Upanishad, he cannot understand, he will understand ulta, reverse. So what is to be done? If they take up Muṇḍaka again, then the old people will think it is a repetition. So how to avoid repetition? Side by side, how this new boy will learn properly. Then they decided that Upanishad, which is most basic Upanishad, not listed in these 10, Shveta-Shatar Upanishad. It is a comprehensive Upanishad. And so they decided that let you now take up Shveta-Shatar Upanishad. And when that was completed, that being a comprehensive Upanishad, now if I learn Prashna, it will not disturb me, it will not be a topsy-turvy thing, I will not misunderstand it. So that was in my personal life. So I am very clear about it. And while reading and studying, we will find it that Prashna is a sequel to Muṇḍaka. Now, that 10 which are mentioned, to fit in that Anushtup shloka, this is said like that. Anushtup meter has 8 letters in each part, 4 parts. 4 parts, 8 letters in each part. So, Isha Kena Katha Prashna. Isha Kena Katha, that means 6 letters have already gone. So 2 more letters are necessary. How can you put Muṇḍaka there? It is this consideration which has made that Now this list is not telling the order in which it has to be studied. And there the so-called traditionalists make a big blunder. I think enough about the outside thing. So I go back a little to tell you that generally when the Vedas are mentioned, three Vedas are mentioned, Trai. Vedas means all supersensuous knowledge. And it was a growing knowledge. It was a growing knowledge, and this another Vyasa, not the Bhadran Vyasa who wrote the Brahma Sutra, Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, called the Veda Vyasa of hoary antiquity. He had four main disciples. He thought, let me allot to each one of them, he and his Shishya Parampara, to memorize this and to study, specialize in a particular Veda. How he made it particular? The poetical part of all the Vedic literature was made into Rig Veda, Richa. And he gave it to study to a particular person. The prose part of the Vedas was made into Yajur Veda. And he gave it to another person to study. Now from the poetry part, there are certain singing part. You know, some poetry can be sung. So that part from the Rig Veda was made into Sama Veda. That is how the division took place. And then a new ideas were growing. A new Upanishad was growing. We'll find that mentioned here in the beginning. There was a great saint, Atharva, and he communicated to his disciple Angira. And so Atharva Angirasa, or that was a separate branch of knowledge called the Atharva Veda. And from that, the later discoveries of Vedanta were getting these three Upanishads. So that is all the outside Varnan which I wanted to do. And now we always discuss 4 points to get real spiritual benefit from this, any scriptural study. And I already told one of them. Name, through name we got the subject matter. So subject matter is, in other technical words, the identity of the universal reality and the individual reality. That is called in the technical language, it is called, that is the subject matter. But in a particular way, it is given, Muṇḍaka Upaniṣad. The speciality of Muṇḍaka Upaniṣad, I will tell you in 3 words, that it divides the knowledge. Well, I will come to that later on. So, that is the subject matter. But what is the purpose of studying? That is already involved in that subject matter, but we must always keep that in mind, and that is to give us fulfillment of life, to give us purnatva, to give us infinitude of life, to give us moksha, to give us freedom from the bondage of desires. That is the purpose which we always should keep in mind. And if that is the purpose of life, same should be the purpose of our study. And then who are we? The best name for all of us, speaker and the listeners together, is that we are sadhakas, a special category of human beings. What is a sadhaka? One who has understood that I have to create change in myself to attain the perfection. To attain the fulfillment of life, I have to change my physical habits. I have to change my mental habits. I have to change my consciousness mainly. In order to approach this consciousness, I have to change my mind. I have to change the workings of my mind. I want to change my physical habits. But the ultimate aim is to change my consciousness into the Rishi's consciousness. So one who is a struggler for this is called a sadhaka. Technically, you will find many things. He should have viveka discrimination. He should have renunciation. He should have mental control, physical control. He should have withdrawal. He should bear the dualities of life. He should always be practicing some form of meditation on God. And he should have that faith that the Rishi's knowledge is correct. And if I follow that, I will also get it correct. So these are the technical ways of telling what is the adhikar. In a simple language, we have to be sadhakas. Now, one more important point remains. I have to again and again stress that in my life, I have not made proper emphasis on this last point, except from my Guru. And that is called the connection, sambandha. What is connection? I have to study Upanishads, I understand. How to study? Because Upanishad is studied to get PhDs. Upanishad is studied to teach again. Upanishads are studied and they find social life in the Vedas, economics in the Vedas, management in the Vedas. So, how the Upanishad should be studied? Let me tell you, I have just now told you through love and devotion. Now let me tell you in my Guru's words. I will tell in two different ways, told by my Guru. First of all, he said visualize a scene from the bhakti areas. Imagine that Radha, the consort of Krishna, is standing, and with her some friend is standing. And at a small distance, somebody has said Sham, the name of Krishna. A Bengali song is there. Saki keva sunaino shamo naam. Kaner vitare diya morame pashino ko akul korilo mor pran. Friend, who has uttered Shama's name? It has gone through my ears and it has touched my core of my being. And it has made me restless to see that Sham. After describing this, my Guru used to say, this is Vedantic Shravan. This is how Vedanta has to be studied. This is how Vedanta has to be listened to. That means, if this listening should make me eager to realize God, or with the keen desire to realize God, jigyasa, with the keen desire to realize God, I should listen. That is one thing. In other words, he used to say, what to study? Rishi Vakyas, Rishi Upanishads. How to study? Study devotionally and study critically and devotionally. Study critically and devotionally. Now, critically does not mean we have to criticize them, but analytically. It connects with why he is telling this thing, what is the change he wants in me, why he is telling this thing at this point, psychological point, what does he want to convey. This analytical finding the meaning intended by the person is called critical study. And then what is devotional study? In my Guruji's language, first fill the gap and then try to fill up the gap. That means each sentence of the Upanishad will set up an ideal before us. Immediately introspect and find out the gap and feel that gap. Feel the big gap between the Rishi's life and my life. Feel the big gap between Rishi's consciousness and my consciousness. And this feeling, this painful feeling, should make me struggle to fill it up by struggle. So this is the devotional study of the scriptures. And so critically and devotionally, if we study this Muṇḍaka Upaniṣad, we are sure to reach the goal of life. Now, let us come back to the text of the Upanishad. We see that all Upanishads, especially this Muṇḍaka Upanishad, is starting with a prayer. Here again, people say it is a Mangalachara. They are dragging the similarity between the ritualistic portion. You know, if you start to do some good work, the bad people will attack us. That has been the eternal problem. The good people do not go and attack. But the bad people are always aggressive. They attack us. And to ward off their attack, this Mangalacharana is there. Now here, we are not concerned with the bad people. Here, what is the obstruction? My own ego. My own non-understanding. That is the obstruction. And if you want to pull that Mangalacharan further, for removing this obstruction, I require a prayer. Or we have just now seen that we want to have a resolve, nishchay. What does this resolve do? Normally, my thinking goes one way, my feeling goes another way, my work goes another way. But if I make a resolve, then all the faculties of my personality become one directional, unidirectional. That is the necessity of the resolve. But resolve has a difficulty also. I resolve, so ego gets involved in a resolve. Now we want to have all the advantages of the resolve, and we do not want the obstruction created by the ego. What is the answer? Prayer. Prayer has sincere prayer. Sincere prayer has all the advantages of the resolve, but minus the disadvantage of ego. We bow down, we pray. That means we put our ego down, and then the communication flows. The Rishi's communication flows into us if we put down our ego. So that is the prayer. Another important thing is, by calling it Mangalacharan, just to be chanted, we lose the force of the words. Actually, the prayer is made in such a way to connect our mind to that knowledge which the Rishi is giving. This connection is made by the prayer. Now let us come to the words of the prayer. It is also called Shantipat. Om. What is Om? We are not going to discuss details of Om, but let us remember. Later on, the Om will be discussed and we will come at that point. In the beginning, let us remember, Om is the nearest unspecified name of the transcendent as well as the immanent reality. Nirgun, Sagun, Brahman both come into the mind when we say Om. So the Om in the beginning means anchor our mind in God and then pray. And what is the prayer? Bhadram karne vishrunuyama deva. Let us go word by word. Bhadram. What is the translation of the word Bhadram? Auspicious. Now, auspicious in secular or worldly life is totally different from auspicious in spiritual life. Totally different. I will give an example. If we talk of death, it is inauspicious. Don't talk of death in worldly life. And in spiritual life, to talk of death is very important. Because then only we remember that the world is transitory. And then we see God. So, lot of difference between auspiciousness in worldly life and auspiciousness in spiritual life. What is auspiciousness in spiritual life? Whatever helps my mind go towards God is auspicious. Whatever obstructs my mind from going to God is abhadra, inauspicious. So please keep this in mind. We are going by the words of the prayer now, that Om Bhadram is the first word. Bhadram means auspicious, not auspicious from the worldly point of view, but auspicious from the spiritual point of view. That means whatever helps me to go to God. Now, what is the next word? Karne Vishrunayama. Later on, we will have Pashyema. Why these two are mentioned? Listening and seeing. If you see our life is maximum influenced by what we hear and what we see. Not by what we smell, not by what we touch, not by what we taste. Though these five indriyas bring knowledge to us of the world, but we are maximum influenced by what we hear and what we see. Now the see will influence us more actually, but we cannot see the reality. We cannot see what is in America. We cannot see here and there. So, hearing is the first and strongest means of knowledge, or that knowledge which influences our life maximum. So, ears, Bhadram Karnebi, by my ears, Shrunuyama. This is a prayer in the plural sense. We. Let us, or may God make me like that, or let us Bhadram Karnebi Shrunayama. Now this again has a subjective and objective part. I should listen to that which takes me to God. Now what takes me to God? It depends upon my mental condition. I will give a small example. Now, for men, corresponding for women you find out, for men, some girl is singing a beautiful song on a video or an audio. Now, if the mind is a little higher, that bhajan, that description of the God, or that inspiring me to go to God will influence. So that will be Bhadram. But instead of that, if my mind goes to a girl is singing, I am a man, then it will take me down. We remember when we were in the training center in Belur, from our rooms to the kitchen, there was a way. In between, there was a Swami's room. And usually he would listen to good devotional songs on the transistor radio. Our principal Maharaj did not allow us to take that route. He used to tell us, go by a roundabout. Don't listen to those songs. So much afraid he was. Anyway, so there is a subjective and objective way. What is subjective? Oh God, make me such a person that everything will take me to God, or maximum things will take me to God. In Sri Ramakrishna, we see any obscene utterance used to put him into God. So, this Bhadram Karnebi Shrunayama, I think I made it clear, as a subjective and objective part. Objective part is such things as at that particular time are conducive to my journey towards God, should I listen. And the subjective part is let my mind change into such a thing that whatever I listen takes me to God. I'll give another small example. People go to Himalayas, trekking. But when Yudhishthira and the Pandavas were in the foothills of Himalayas, Draupadi asked him, "You are always talking of God. What has God given to you?" Yudhishthira said, "I am not a businessman in the field of religion. What Himalayas gives me, but they are divine, they are sublime. So I love them. And God is the most sublime, so I love God." So, this difference between ordinary beauty and sublimity. So, if my mind changes in that way, then I will meet the sublime things, and by anything I will feel like going to God. We are going through a garden. We see a beautiful rose flower. We pluck it up, smell it, and throw it out. But by seeing that beautiful flower, if we think, oh, it has been offered to God, or let me take it and offer to in some temple, then that is the difference. So now, Bhadram Karnebi Shrunayama. And the next is Shrunayama, Bhadram Karnebi Shrunayama Devaha. So we assume that the prayer is to God or resolved in the mind, but it is clearly mentioned to whom the prayer is there, Devaha. Now, who are these Devas? Particular cosmic deities. If sun god is not there, my eyes cannot see. If the space god is not there, I cannot hear. If the wind god is not there, I can have no feeling of touch. So, my mind has the corresponding Devata moon. So, these are called Devas. In ordinary religious life. But these Devas can be thought of in a different way in spiritual life. Just as I have my eyes and nose and all that, the Supreme God, the reality, is manifested differently through these different Devas. So, unless I change my attitude, that means finally the prayer becomes to God or the Supreme Reality. Bhadram Karnebi Shrunayama Deva, that means, oh, my Supreme God, let me hear proper things. Then, Bhadram Pashyema Akshabir Yajatra. Bhadram, auspicious, we understood now. Pashyema, seeing. Akshabir, by my eyes. Now the Sambodhan is Yajatra. Yajatra can have two meanings. If you take it as Sambodhan, then it is referring to the sacrifice. I sacrifice to Indra or Chandra or so many gods, which are nothing but forms of Brahman. So I am addressing Brahman as the gods of sacrifice. That is the one meaning. But according to Sanskrit grammar, the Prathama and Sambodhan words are same. So, Yajatra can also and is also referring to the sadhakas. What is the essential quality of a sadhaka? He must be a sacrificer. sacrifice of any lower thing into higher. Sacrifice finally of this I into cosmic reality. Sacrificing lower habits into better habits. So it is declaring that we are sacrificers. And we, the sacrificers, are praying that let us meet everything auspicious through our eyes and ears. Now, it is a vertical. That means it assumes the effect of the previous into the next. So if we are sacrificers, what will happen to us? Or another way of telling what we are. Sthirai rangai tanuvi. Anga and tanu. That means parts of the body and functional parts of the body. Parts of the body and functional parts of the body should be steady, sthirai. With our angas and tanus steady. How the steadiness comes? If we are sacrificers. If we are sacrificers, steadiness would come. If not, we must become steady to pray. So, sthirai rangai. And what will we do with that sthirai anga? Tushta vamsa. Praising. Whom we are praising? The Supreme Lord. Remember, Swami Vivekananda analytically has told us, suppose there was no desire in us, what could be the form of religion? Praising God, that should be the only religion. Oh God, what wonderful you are. Because you have desires, so we take God in a different way. So, these people, the sacrificers, are people with steady limbs and parts. They are always praising God. Now comes the most important word, Veshema. In the Gita Press book, it is translated as bhog kare, enjoy. No. I had a doubt on this word. I spoke to the late revered Harshananda Swami. And he told me that Sayana Bhashya has given a meaning for us, Veshema. And he told me that meaning, joyful life, purposeful life. That is the meaning of the word Veshema. Purposeful life. If I am spending a purposeful life, then I am happy always. So this bhoga means happiness. But happiness not of enjoyment. Happiness of spending a purposeful life. I will tell a small incident here. In Chandigarh, when I was talking, the principal of a boys' college, government boys' college, he said that it has solved a great problem in his life. He used to say, 2 more years for retirement, how shall I pass those? Then he said, I understood. I have not to pass. I have to spend purposefully those 2 years. So the whole world changes. Veshema Devahitam Yadayu. This Devahitam also has 2 meanings. And when there are 2 valid meanings, both have to be accepted. Devahitam means decided by God or gods. And Devahitam means for the sake of God. I don't want to live for my sake. I want to live for the sake of God. That is one meaning. And the other meaning is that no prayer for 100 years of life. Let God decide how much I will live. Devahitam Yadayu. Whatever age God has decided, I should spend purposefully. Veshema Devahitam Yadayu. I should spend purposefully whatever God has decided for me. This is the prayer. We have dealt with the first shloka of the prayer today. In our next class, we will deal with the second shloka, very practical in our life. So we'll deal with it next time. Om Bhadram Karnebhi Shrunuyama Devaha Bhadram Pashye Makhyaviryajatraha Sthirairangai Tuštavansasthanubhi Vyashema Devahitam Yadayu Swasti na Indro Vruddashrava Swasti na Pusha Vishwaveda Swasti na Starkyo Arishtanemi Swasti no Brahaspatir Dadatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.